A father's last vigil. I live my days now in Knoll, Missouri, an old man who has learned the slow rhythm of the Elk River. The folks here in the Ozarks know loss the way they know weather, carved into the limestone bluffs, the same as the names on the old stones out at Lee Cemetery. Knowing about loss and living inside it are two different animals, though. And I learned the difference in 2006, the year I lost my oldest son. David was my firstborn, 38 years old and 3 years ahead of his brother Rob, always the one out front, stepping into life as though he carried a map nobody else could read. He'd settled in O'Fallon, out past St. Louis, with a wife he adored and 2 teenagers who carried his spark in their eyes, Samantha bright and sensitive, Zachary quieter, steady, the kind who feels things down deep and works hard not to let it show. For 18 months, David fought the cancer, and 18 months is a long stretch of road when every mile is paved with dread. There were treatments and scans and surgeries. Hope climbed the hill and then came tumbling back down it, over and over, until the climbing itself seemed like a cruelty. Robin and I made that drive from Knoll to O'Fallon more times than I could count, watching the Ozark ridges flatten into the big fields east of Springfield, then into suburban streets too clean and too young to hold sorrow. Robin never said she hated that drive, but I knew it anyway, the way a husband knows things about his wife without being told. David tried to live in the world as long as it would let him. He'd sit on the couch after treatments, pale and shivering under a blanket while Kim rubbed circles into his back, and he'd still find a joke somewhere inside himself, bringing up the Cardinals, asking about work, teasing the kids over homework, as if by keeping the ordinary things alive he could hold the door shut against the dark. Parents see through brave faces, though, and I could see the wear in him, the thinning line of hope behind his eyes, the way he held on, not for himself anymore, but for the people who loved him. Then came the last month. A hospice bed arrived with its iron rails and its quiet authority over final things, set up in the living room where the sunlight warmed the space like God offering one last kindness. The machines came too, with their tubing and their pale bottles of measured mercy. Someone taped a schedule to the refrigerator, the kind you memorize without meaning to because time has changed shape on you. He slept more and talked less, but when his eyes found someone he loved, they still lit up, as if the ember in him refused to go out. That month was a strange kind of holy, pain and tenderness sharing the same walls. Kim became caretaker and nurse and guardian all at once, holding on to him like she was holding back a tide with her bare hands. Samantha sat by him one afternoon with a bottle of nail polish and painted his fingernails a light shade of blue. "It's a trend," she announced, defiant on his behalf. David smiled, tired but real. "Guess I'm finally fashionable," he said. Zachary didn't talk much through any of it. Boys often don't. He'd sit on the floor by the bed with his shoulders drawn tight, carrying the weight of growing up shoved onto his back too soon. I told him once about an evening I'd spent sitting quietly by a stream, watching minnows dart under the water. "This is like that," I told him. He didn't answer, but he leaned a little in my direction. That was enough. The nights were the longest stretch after the machines got turned off, the clocks too loud in that quiet house. Robin took up her cross-stitching just to keep her hands from shaking. Rob paced the floor, then sat, then paced again. A man trying to stay strong while a piece of his life slipped through his fingers like creek water. We took turns sleeping in chairs, though sleep isn't the right word for it. Not when a man's child is leaving the world. Visitors came through, friends, and Kim's family, and a buddy from David's old soccer days who couldn't stop talking because the silence was too heavy for him to lift. They brought casseroles and pies that tasted like cardboard and grace mixed together, hugged Kim and the kids, and took David's hand gently, afraid of causing him pain but wanting to be part of his last circle here on Earth. Near the end, Kim pulled me aside. "It's close," she said. "The hospice nurse says his body is tired." I nodded because nodding was all I had left in me. Fathers aren't meant to outlive their sons. Nature got that order wrong somewhere along the way. The house went quiet on that last night in a way I can still hear if I close my eyes, as if the world had paused its breathing. David's breaths came light, and then lighter still. Robin held one hand, and Kim held the other. Rob stood behind me with a hand pressed on my shoulder, gripping hard, like a man who needed something solid to anchor himself to the earth. Samantha and Zachary woke on instinct, drawn by that deep tether a child keeps to a parent, and came to the bedside without a word. There weren't any tears yet, just presence and a silent kind of love. Then, in a moment no bigger than the space between two heartbeats, David breathed out but didn't breathe back in again. Kim whispered, "I love you," through a voice breaking apart. Robin made a sound I had never once heard from her, something ancient and raw, a mother losing a piece of her own soul. Rob tightened his grip on my shoulder until it hurt, and I welcomed that hurt because it proved I was still standing there, still a father, even with one less son to show for it in this world. I leaned forward, touched David's forehead, and said the only prayer a father has left when the words run out. "I'll miss you so very much, David." Dawn touched the curtains not long after, indifferent and unavoidable, not caring whether any heart in that house was ready for it. We called hospice and held on to each other, crying in turns, small and sharp, like waves breaking against stone. The kids came back later and sat by the bed, touching the rails where their father had lain. Grief is a room a person has to walk through. There's no walking around it. Then came the practical things grief forces on the living. The phone calls and the arrangements and the food covered over in foil. The quiet march of what must be done. Life has no shame about moving forward, even when a man wishes it would sit down and mourn alongside him a while longer. Weeks later, I walked across the golf course to the field beyond it and watched the Elk River slide past the way time does, slow and constant, carrying memories along like leaves caught in the current. I took that walk many times after, always alone. The water never hurries for anybody, and yet it never once stops moving either. Grief is like that too. It doesn't end, it settles, and it learns, in time, to share a man's life, instead of swallowing it whole. I talk to David sometimes on those walks, soft but out loud, the way a father does when the world has gone quiet. I tell him about Rob, and about the grandkids, and about Robin, who joined him years later and left me here to carry both their memories. I tell him I miss him, and I tell him about the life I've lived without him. A son's life gets measured in more than years. It gets measured in the love left behind after he's gone. David loved his wife and his kids and his brother and his mother and me, the way a man loves when he knows his time is short. He faced the unfaceable with humor and grit, lived with courage, and died with dignity. And in the space between those two things, he raised a family that carries his light forward still. When the mornings turn cool and the river mist curls up like a prayer rising off the water, I feel David close by. His memory walks beside me, patient and steady as the river itself, reminding me that love outlasts breath, and that a father never stops being a father. Not even when the whole world has gone quiet.